Welcome back to the Subway 400 on Fox. Rusty Wallace, the leader after pit stops at 50 laps. We showed you the replay of Jeff Gordon having a real close call on pit road and picked up some radio chatter about it.
Got into the wall a little bit. I think I barely touched it though. It should be fine.
10-4. Jeff, were you hearing static and stuff on off Ron's radio? Should we have him try another radio there?
He's definitely breaking up.
Well, that's a problem. Ron is Ron Thiel, Jeff's spotter.
And when you talk about a pit road like this, we talked about it last week at Daytona, because that driver's in there, maybe not Jeff Gordon, but Greg Biffle, who pulled out on him, they're in there and they can't see. They don't have a lot of peripheral vision, so it's on the spotter's shoulders and the crew chief's shoulders to help these cars in their pit box and leaving.
Now, Dale Earnhardt Jr. has made 4 pit stops after cutting down that front tire. But he is still on the lead lap. Make that 5 pit stops as you ride with him down pit road at the 45-mile-an-hour speed limit. He's the only car in the pit lane, and Matt's waiting on him.
And this is his 5th stop, Mike. And the problem for Dale Earnhardt Jr. on his first stop, they had to pull all the rubber which is wrapped around the spindle. Also, the damages are going to take that left front off again. It has supposedly broken the fender braces up underneath, so they're going to try to work on that as the field is coming around out of turn 4. They are keeping Junior abreast of where the field is, so he will not lose a lap. Tony Eury Jr., the car chief, on the radio. He has gone back up, and you can see the damage to that left front fender.
Well, Matt, the real problem is this pit road is so long and maintaining 45 miles an hour. By the time Dale Earnhardt Jr. gets to his pit box from being at the tail end of the field is in turn 4, so they don't have very long to work on it each time.
Let's go down to the Hollywood Hotel. Chris Myers has our race break brought to you by Visa.
And with Jeff Hammond, we talked about the 6 rookies running in today's race, but it is the veterans, Rusty Wallace, Bill Elliott, and Mark Martin of the top 3. In fact, 130 wins combined, and that tells you experience on this track.
Got to have that experience, Chris. I mean, this is what this racetrack's all about. Tire management, being smooth on and off the throttle, not overly using your tires, and that's where these guys are at the top of the field right now. They know how to work that process out.
What do you lose, about 10 miles per hour for the long run?
About 2 seconds. You lose about 2 seconds a lap from start to the finish of a run.
And Rusty Wallace, it's pointed out, he's won here 5 times. He, of course, won in a Pontiac and in a Ford at Rockingham. This time he's in a Dodge and is your current leader. Just a quick thought on what Dale Earnhardt Jr. is experiencing. Looked like he caught a break with the mandatory caution, but he's in trouble.
Oh, he really did. He caught a really lucky break, because otherwise, if it went for NASCAR's mandatory caution flag, he would be already a lap down, and probably more than that. So he got an opportunity to come and work on his car. And I talked to his crew chief, Tony Eury Jr., earlier this morning. They need a good run here if they want to get back in the point championship already. They're looking at points.
Dave Blaney, the pole sitter, currently running 7th. That is our Visa race break from the Hollywood Hotel. Let's go back upstairs.
40 cars on the lead lap. The last of those are Earnhardt Jr. and Joe Nemechek, who's made 3 pit stops under this caution. 2 drivers are laps down, and they're both rookies. Larry Foyt, 2 laps back, and 1 lap back, and Tony Raines, who is 2 laps back. The only car in the garage is Derek Cope.
And the reason Joe Nemechek has made so many pit stops, remember, we saw that damage on his left front fender. They've been trying to repair that.
Robbie Gordon at work. 53 laps down, 340 to go.
Pulled it back into 2nd gear there.
And getting set for the restart.
You're ready. Real tight up here. Green flag.
Of course, those 2 cars that are lapped down, Larry Foyt and Tony Raines up there trying to get their lap back, but I don't think it's going to happen. Mike, I know it's early in the race, but what do you think?
Let's crank it up. Nearly trouble with a capital T back in that second pack as Rusty Wallace, Bill Elliott, and Mark Martin scoot away from the field.
I tell you, the engines sound a lot different here than they did at Daytona, don't they? At 800 horsepower.
And they're turning about 2,000 more RPMs, turning that 9,000 here, especially on those fresh tires. But I'm going to tell you, a group that was awesome at Daytona last week, aside from Dale Earnhardt Incorporated, Richard Childress Racing. But I'm telling you, they have went from the pit house to the outhouse because Robbie Gordon is the highest Childress car right now in 25th. Kevin Harvick in the 29 is 27th. His other teammate, Jeff Green, is 28th. Harvick came down here and tested, and if you picked a racetrack where Jeff Green had 2 awesome races last year, it was right here at Rockingham.
Yeah, and he almost went a lap down there before that mandatory caution, so definitely struggling, but that's not always indicative of how it's going to end up, because this track goes through some changes. As rubber gets put down on the racetrack, cars that are not very good could come to the front before the day's over.
Robbie Gordon battling John Andretti, who makes his 300th career start today.
I tell you, a guy that was running there in the top 5, 6, or 7, we had talked about him. He had to come back to pit road, and he's all the way back in about the 39th position. Elliott Sadler in that 38 car. Remember, you heard Dick Bergman talk about the grill. They had to come in a couple of times and repair that screen wire. And you would think, well, why don't you just take the screen wire off? Well, here we talk about the tires wearing out. If you took that screen wire off, Dick Bergman, the rubber would clog the radiator up.
Well, they still got some grill work in there on that number 38 car, but the problem is that they've had trouble keeping the temperature down there, and that's why they came in a second time to do some more work.
Yeah, it's like, Dick, it's like a barbecue grill. Going to cook the engine if they don't do something.
And just like at Daytona, Darrell, I think a lot of these teams are still struggling with all these new noses to find out just how you can run the tape to block the front end up.
Well, it's a cool day, and so everybody's got maximum tape on right now.
Dick Berggren.
Well, Rusty Wallace has got a very well-balanced race car right now, reflected in the tire wear. That's good for 2 reasons. 1, a well-balanced car is fast, and 2, here at Rockingham, it'll let those tires last a long, long time.
I mean, that's the thing, Darrell, and you know it from running so many races here. You can go out there and run much faster than you can, or you want to run faster than you can those first 10 laps, but if you do, it's going to go away much quicker.
Oh, yeah, and the big thing, and I don't want to harp on it too much, but this track will change at about 200 laps. The track will go through a transition, and I tell you, I've seen cars here that were so loose and guys couldn't drive them. They adjust them up and get them good for the end of the day, and they're up there in the hunt at the end of the race.
Fastest car on the racetrack, the bright orange Pontiac of Ricky Craven and the blue and white Dodge of Ryan Newman. They are slicing fast through this field.
I mean, you heard Jeff Hammond talk about Ryan Newman. He's all the way up to 7th, so he definitely has one of the quicker cars.
And Craven just continues to work that outside while Newman has been working the bottom of the racetrack. But whatever it is, it's working for both of them.
There's Sterling Marlin up there. He's not in too bad a shape either, Larry. I've been watching him, and his car looks like it's handling really, really well. And Sterling's the kind of guy that kind of paces himself, thinks about the big picture.
Brought a brand new race car here, untested. Never been to the racetrack till they unloaded it on Thursday.
Last car on the lead lap after those 5 pit stops, Dale Earnhardt Jr. Matt can update us.
And the problems continue for Junior. Mike, he's reporting in his team. He still has a vibration in the suspension area. Now he thinks it may be something wrong with the left front rotor.
Here you see the telemetry right there. You see the interval back up to the leader, Rusty Wallace, 15 seconds. That's over a half a lap back.
When you wrapped it, when that tire came apart and it started wrapping around all up in there, no telling what kind of damage it's done.
New second place car, Ricky Craven.
Likes that high line. He rode it there earlier in the race, and it worked for him.
Now following Ryan Newman up through the pack is Kurt Busch. He's the second Ford in the race behind teammate Mark Martin, who's 3rd. And Busch now in 8th place. Pretty much following along in Newman's tracks, but working a different line on the racetrack there. Busch goes high as Newman stays low.
There's our leader, Rusty Wallace, in the 2 car, a little over 2 seconds ahead of Ricky Craven, but Craven's running a little bit quicker than Rusty. But back to Kurt Busch, started back in 27th. Those guys had a great run here in the fall. I talked to Jimmy Finney, his crew chief, this morning. He said it's a completely different setup, though. Our setup from the fall, when we made some race runs the other day, was way too tight. The car would not turn it off.
He told me they put Mark set up in, that they threw what Mark had run here was pretty successful through the years, so they just put his setup in. I think that's pretty smart.
Not a bad setup.
No.
69 laps complete here at the Rock. Rusty Wallace leads the Subway 400 on Fox. The Subway 400 on Fox is brought to you by Dodge. You can take life as it comes, or you can grab life by the horns. Dodge. Dodge leads the Subway 400. Rusty Wallace with a 2.4-second lead on Ricky Craven's Pontiac and Mark Martin's Ford. Here's a look from our Budweiser aerial coverage.
That 40 car is the car I'm keeping an eye on, Larry. He just seems to be clicking them off. I think he's actually a little bit quicker than Rusty is right now.
He's about a 10th quicker than Rusty that last lap.
I talked to those guys over there this morning, and they were really happy with their car. They thought they would have a good day, and they were right.
Let's update you. Our front row runners, Dave Blaney, who started on pole, is 10th, and here's Johnny Benson, the outside pole sitter and October winner, running in 17th. Steve?
And Mike, Johnny Benson reported that his car would not pivot. It would not turn in the center of the corners. We'll use Jeff Hammond's Ford cutaway car to explain what they did on that last stop. Now, this is the left front spring. On the right front spring, they took this spring rubber out, and that should hopefully change the handling characteristics and help that number 10 car turn.
And Steve, the odd thing about the rubber in the right front spring is you cannot start a race with a rubber in the right in either front spring. But what NASCAR let these guys do because of lack of practice time is if they wanted to put a half a rubber in either front spring, which would up the rate about 100, 150 pounds, they could start the race. But it didn't take those guys long to get that one out of that right front, soften that spring rate.
Meanwhile, Dale Earnhardt Jr. has diagnosed the problem he's having with his Chevrolet.
I know what it is. It's the brake rotor or something tore up on the car. I'm losing the brake. I'm about out of brakes, Junior. Kevin, you got a rotor out here or anything? Well, let's get a rotor out here because you're going to change the rotor probably.
And that'll be time consuming.
Oh, yeah.
And I'd say there's a good chance, Jeff, that probably when that tire went down, that it could have maybe put a little flat spot on the rotor or maybe even put a crack in that rotor.
Yeah, Larry, I think you're right on that. He probably got maybe some rubber on it. The thing was real hot, and all of a sudden it's messed it up really bad. So it's right now, as you're sitting there looking, there's a rotor right there on the cutaway part of our race car. And as you can see right there with the caliper, if you get that rubber caught up in there, it could real easily get on the brake pad and again give the driver a sensation of it being bent or warped. And it doesn't take a whole lot to mess a rotor up.
And if you notice those fins right there, what that is, that's cooling fins. That's to help cool the rotor. Matt Yoakum.
Well, Larry, if they have to change that, as you mentioned, it's going to be very time-consuming. Second straight week, Junior's had some kind of mechanical issue. Remember back to last week, they had an alternator problem. During the red flag, Jeff Clark, the engine tuner, they had actually practiced preparing to change the alternator. They had it down to 35 seconds. Unfortunately, it's going to take them a lot longer. They've got to work on that rotor today.
Yeah, because, I mean, the heat just in changing that thing is going to be immense. And, you know, again, they had a regulator go out in their alternator. I asked Jeff Clark, how much does a regulator cost? He said, $1.4 million.
Yeah, but you know, what's wrong with the Junior's car was caused because he ran into somebody and got the fender into the tire, cut the tire down. So it's not like they did something wrong with the car itself. Kind of created that on their own.